Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to the latest episode of Musical Musings. This program airs every Wednesday at 1 p.m. and we broadcast it to you from Rajmakon University of Technology, Pranakon. I'll be bringing this program to you in two parts. During the first part of our program, I will introduce a song to you and the performer who does the song. We'll discuss both a little bit. We'll discuss the band or the performer a little bit, and then we will discuss the main idea of the song, basically what it's all about. Then we'll listen to the song. Then we'll go to the second part of our program where we will analyze the lyrics. The lyrics are the words to the song. We will look especially at any difficult vocabulary, slang, and sayings. Anything that may be a little hard to understand. Then we'll get to the news and latest updates from the university as usual.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for the Musical Musings program. I'm an American English teacher here at Rajmakon University of Technology, Pranakon. I've been teaching here for about 7 years, and we've been hosting this program for over a year now. So, for this week's program, we are going to be doing the song American Woman by the Guess Who. All right, so before we get to the song, let's talk about the band a little bit. Again, the name of the band is the Guess Who. They are from Winnipeg, which is a city in Alberta, Canada. You may not have heard of Alberta either. That is a province in Canada. The United States usually uses states, not provinces. But here in Thailand, we use provinces, like they do in Canada. So, like Nong Khai province, for example. So Alberta is a province in Canada. Okay, so this is pretty unique. We haven't had too many bands from Canada. I would say, just thinking about the bands, performers, singers that come out of Canada, it's probably mostly just because it's a smaller country in population, not in size. In size, it's one of the biggest countries in the world. But in population, it's one of the smaller, it's a smaller sized country. And I'm thinking that's why we don't have a whole lot of performers that come out of there. Because the ones that come out of there are perfectly good quality. We have featured Gordon Lightfoot on this program before. He's from Canada, and he's wonderful. Sadly, he passed away last year, I believe it was. So very recently. And Celine Dion, who is very famous. She's from Canada. There are lots of excellent performers from Canada. So these guys are from Canada. But again, we have not had a lot of performers from Canada. We've done Gordon Lightfoot, and I'm not sure we've had anyone else on our program that is from Canada. A lot of American bands, quite a few British bands, at least a couple of Australian bands, not much from Canada. So, yeah, they're from Winnipeg, Alberta, Canada. Okay, so they started in 1958 as Chad Allen and the Reflections. And they changed that in 1965 to Chad Allen and the Expressions, but that didn't last very long. And I will explain to you why that is. So, in 1965, They had kind of a hit song. I say kind of a hit song. Most people have not heard of Chad Allen and the Reflections or Chad Allen and the Expressions, so they weren't that popular. In fact, the Guess Who is one of the lesser popular bands that we'll be doing on this program. I usually pick really popular bands, so we have a lot of music catalog for me to point you to after we're done with our program. They are one of the lesser popular bands, but still their top song, which is what we're going to talk about today, is really popular. So most people who like rock music, that old classic style rock music, most people know who the Guess Who is, because this song was extremely popular that we're going to be talking about today. So anyway, this song that came out in 1965 was not all that popular, but it was for them. It was considered a hit song. It was a hit song for them, and it was released in a couple of other countries outside Canada. And of course, being a Canadian band, they were most popular in Canada. So what they wanted to do is provide some mystery to this song. This was during a time where there was a lot of British music coming into America and Canada. And their sound, you could mistake it for a British band. So they wanted people to think that they were a British band releasing this song in Canada. And of course, they were well known in Canada, so what they wanted to do is use a different name. Well, rather than use a different name, they just tried to be mysterious. And they said that the song was by Guess Who? Like a question, guess who? Like you have to guess who it is. The song is by Guess Who? So that's how they released the song in Canada. And of course, this was back in 1965. This was before the internet, so you can't just Google to find out that song was released under their real name in the other two countries it was released in. So nobody really knew that. Nobody was aware that this song had already been released. There might have been one or two people out there who maybe had traveled around. So some Canadian that traveled to Britain while the song was out, they would have heard the song under the correct name, which was Chad Allen and the Expressions. But other than that, with no internet back then, nobody knew who it was, so they released it under Guess Who? Well, that created a bit of a problem for them, because once it became known who did the song, it was Chad Allen and the Expressions. The disc jockeys, they kind of enjoyed this little joke that the band did. So the disc jockeys, that's the people that play the music at the radio station, they kept referring to them as Guess Who, even with other songs of theirs. So eventually the band was almost forced to adopt that name, because back in their home country, that's all the disc jockeys were referring to them as, was Guess Who, Guess Who, Guess Who. So they took the name, they added the in the front of it, so they took the name The Guess Who. So that's how they got their name. Very strange way to get your name. All right, and one of the earliest members of the band, it's not clear to me. Sometimes, even though I like to think I know a lot about music, we do a lot of different bands, a lot of different genres. I have to do some research here. So I don't know all of the history of all of these bands. So in doing my research for the Guess Who, it wasn't clear to me whether this individual was a founding member or just came in really early. But one of the earliest members of the band was a gentleman by the name of Randy Bachman. And that's a very interesting name in the rock music industry, because he would later go on to form the band Bachman Turner Overdrive, which is actually probably even more famous than the Guess Who. They have a couple of... they're also not a huge band, but again, everyone that's into rock music, classic rock music, they all know who Bachman Turner Overdrive is. In fact, sometimes they just shorten it and say BTO. Bachman Turner Overdrive, BTO. Okay, so the Guess Who, they disbanded in 1975. So that's not so short of a time, but also not a really long time for the band to be around. Because remember, I said they formed in 1958 as Chad Allen and the Reflections, and it was effectively the same band. I say effectively. They did switch out quite a few people here and there along the way. But they got a few of their most important people that stuck around most of the time pretty early on, like Randy Bachman. So they were pretty consistently that same band. So even though they didn't form as the Guess Who until 1965, that was really because they were forced to change their name by the disc jockeys. So it's really the same band as Chad Allen and the Reflections. So we can say that they really started around 1958, roughly. Maybe a little later because, again, they were still settling on the band members. So around 1958. So that means they were around for about 17 years. So that's not a short amount of time, but not really long compared to some of these bands we've done. Some of these bands we've talked about are still around today. And in fact, there is still a current form of the band. They are sort of not performing right now. They are unofficially, officially, kind of, sort of still around. Because what happened is there was another person who formed a version of the band. And again, I had to do some research on this, and I had trouble figuring out if he was once a member of the band officially, because it's a little bit weird, because what's happened is he's being sued by people who were long associated with the band, like Randy Bachman. He's being sued by them, by a few of them, not just Randy Bachman. He's being sued by them for using their music and using their name. And so now, in the interim, while the lawsuit's being resolved, the new performers cannot use those songs, at least the ones that were written by the people that are suing. And that's some of their most famous music, including the song we're going to do today. And so what's happening is that new version of the Guess Who is basically canceling all of their concerts because they can't perform their best music, just kind of on a rolling basis as we go along, because they're waiting for the lawsuit to be resolved, so they don't want to cancel all of their dates like a year in advance or anything. So they're canceling them like a week or two in advance, just continuously this year. That's why I said they're sort of around, but sort of not. Because of this lawsuit, they really can't perform. But there is a band called the Guess Who that, when it was legal at least, was performing the music of the Guess Who. Is it really the same band? I would argue no. But like if you go onto Wikipedia, it says that they've been around from something like 1978 to present, so I guess they've been doing it a long time. I think it's 1978 to present, so that's only 3 years after the original Guess Who disbanded. Which I think is why it's listed online that way, as being part of the original band, because they've been around so long and picked up only a few years after the original band broke up. But I'd still say it's not the same band. That's just my opinion on it. So I would say the Guess Who stopped existing in 1975 and has not reformed. There's basically just a new band doing the Guess Who's music under the Guess Who's name, but it's not the Guess Who. That's my feeling on it. But again, it's a little bit confusing, and there's a lawsuit ongoing over it. But that's my feeling on it. So as far as I'm concerned, the Guess Who disbanded in 1975, and that's it. Okay, so now about today's song. We're going to be doing American Woman. Most of the song is pretty easy to understand. Not very confusing. It's about a bad, I guess, a relationship It's not entirely clear that the man and the woman in the song were in a relationship, but clearly the man knows the woman. Clearly the woman in the song is trying to have some sort of a relationship with the man, and the man is not interested at all, as you will see from the song. So it's about a guy that wants nothing to do with some bad woman from America. That's why it's American Woman. Now, when we talk about America, Canada's in North America, so sometimes some Canadians get upset when people from the United States call the United States America, because they're Americans too. But most of them don't get upset by it because the actual name of the United States is the United States of America, which is why we just shorten it to America. So when we talk about America, we usually mean the United States. Even though some people on the continent of North America get a little bit upset by that. Most people don't. Most people don't care. But I remember a time when I was growing up where it was a little bit of a bigger deal, and people from Canada would get all upset, like, oh, we're American too. So what they're referring to here when they say American Woman is someone from the United States. All right. So, even though it's mostly easy to understand, there are a few lines which are tricky. And there's a reason. Because this song was written on the fly. On the fly. What does that mean? To do something on the fly means you do it without any preparation. So what happened was they were at a concert. They had to play a song. The whole story has never really been explained. In fact, even the band members can't quite agree and remember on exactly which concert hall what they were performing at. They all know they were in Ontario somewhere, which is another province in Canada. They all remember roughly where they were, but they don't remember exactly where they were performing. So the story is a little bit confusing because it's not clear, like why. Why would you? I mean, they were touring. They had a whole set list. They knew all the songs they had to perform. Why did they suddenly have to perform a song that they were unprepared for? I don't know. That's never really been explained. I'm not sure why they were in that situation. But they had to perform a song they didn't have. And so Randy Bachman, well, I believe it was Randy. I believe he's one of the guitarists. He does also sing, but I think he was just doing guitar for this song. So he was on the stage playing some guitar riff. A riff just means like a series of chords or notes that sounds really cool. So he's playing this, and you usually play it over and over and over again. That's kind of a riff. So he was playing this guitar riff, and so the lead singer came out and just made up all the words right there, right then and there. And there happened to be someone in the audience recording it. And so they got a hold of the recording tape so that they could play it back, because they just made it up, like I said, on the fly. They just made it up right there. So they didn't remember the lyrics by the time they were done singing it. Well, what the heck did we just sing? I don't know. So they played back the song and they wrote down the lyrics, and then they turned it into this song that you're going to hear today. And I believe they released it the next year. I think it was early in the next year. It was released in 1970. I believe they came up with it in 1969, but it was released in 1970. And again, it was very popular, as I mentioned earlier. It went to number 1 in Canada, and it was number 9 in America, but that's number 9 like on the overall, they call them charts. That's like the ratings of the songs. So the overall, like all the music in America, it was number 9. But then they separate them down into different groups, like the R&B chart or the adult contemporary chart or things like that. And so they have one chart which is called the Hot 100, which is kind of like the best of the best, like the really popular songs. Now you might think, well, that's going to be the same thing as the overall list, right? Because those are the popular songs. Well, not necessarily, because when you're looking at the overall list, there are some genres that just are less popular, and so you may need to put them higher on that list just because you want to treat the genres equally. So on the overall list, it might get a little bit mixed up in there because of the different genres. So on the Hot 100 list, this song actually did get to number 1 in America for 3 weeks. So, again, very popular song. It's by far the Guess Who's most popular song. All right, so enough about that. So let's go ahead and listen to it. So let's get to the song. For those of you joining us on YouTube, you will notice that once again we are without video this week. But of course, the song video you have to jump to separately. So that's there. You will see the link in the upper right-hand corner. Please click on that, and that will take you to the video. And then just jump on back here for the second half of our program. And for those of you who are listening by radio or streaming, all of you, you should be able to listen just fine. Okay, so let's get to the song.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So that is American Woman by the Guess Who, and it is a song about a bad relationship. And the man is trying to get away from the woman. Okay, so let's get to the lyrics. Most of what we're going to be doing today with these lyrics is explaining words or phrases. This is not a difficult song to understand. And the couple of lines in here that are difficult to understand, it's really because the guy just made them up. They don't really mean much of anything. That I do know about this song because the lead singer was interviewed about it, and he said he just made the words up because he had to make it up as he was going along. So the couple of lines that seem to make no sense, they're hard to figure out. I will point them out to you when we get to them. But yeah, they do make no sense. He was just making stuff up. Okay, so let's get to the lyrics. So we start out with American woman, stay away from me. American woman, mama, let me be. Okay, so there's not too much here. Stay away from me. I think probably most of you know that phrase. It means do not come near me. Okay, and then it says American woman, mama, let me be. Mama, that's a word for mother. That's weird. We will sometimes use mama to refer to just any woman. It's slang that we don't really use very much anymore in America or Canada. It's more something from the 60s and 70s. Like if a girl was really pretty, you might say, ooh, she's one hot mama. We don't say that anymore. It's not very polite. It's not very polite to say. So mama is not referring to mother. It's just referring to the woman. And when you say let me be is another way of saying leave me alone. And in different parts of America, we don't really use that saying. Like where I grew up in America, no one would ever say let me be. But like in parts of the South of America, they might say that. I'm not sure about Canada, since that's kind of the opposite of the southern part of America. So I don't know if he would normally use that or if he was using that just because it rhymes easily with stay away from me, mama, let me be. So he might have just used that because it rhymes. I'm not sure. Not sure why he used that phrasing. But it just means leave me alone. Now, okay, I should explain leave me alone, what that means. Alone means by yourself. It doesn't necessarily, when you say leave me alone, it doesn't mean to leave that person by themselves, because who knows, they might be with someone else. What it means is don't bother me. Don't talk to me. Don't text me. Don't call me. Don't visit me. Don't just stay away. Okay, so that's what let me be means. That's what leave me alone means. Okay? Don't come hanging around my door. I don't want to see your face no more. Okay, so hanging around, that's like when you're just standing somewhere, not doing much. So in other words, don't come standing by my door like waiting for me to come home or waiting for me to leave just so you can see me. So this woman, it sounds like, is really stalking him, like following him around, chasing him, and he does not like it. So don't come hanging around my door. I don't want to see your face no more. Okay, that sounds a little weird, right? I don't want to see your face. Why just your face? Again, this is just a saying we have in English. If you say, I don't want to see your face anymore, it just means I don't want to see you anymore. It doesn't mean just your face. It's just how we say it. It's just a saying. It means I don't want to see you anymore. Okay? I got more important things to do than spend my time growing old with you. Okay, I think that's all pretty easy. When we say growing old, it just means getting old. In other words, he doesn't want to be with her. In other words, spending time with her, and the longer you spend with someone, the older you're going to get, right? Because you're with them. So, okay, so he's just saying he doesn't want to be with her. Okay. We get to the chorus here. Now, woman, I said stay away. Okay, so stay away. The word stay means to remain somewhere. Away means at a distance. So stay away means remain far from me. Don't come close. Don't come near me. So that's what. So when you say stay away, it means remain far from me. I said stay away. American woman, listen what I say. So there he's telling her to listen to him. Listen what I say. That's not good English. That's not how we would say that. It just works well for the song as far as the length of the line and rhyming. Stay away, what I say. It works well. You would say, listen to what I say, or listen to what I'm telling you, or listen to me. Listen to me is usually the simplest way we'd say that. But in other words, he's telling her to pay attention. When you say listen to me, it doesn't mean just hear what they're saying. It means actually do what I'm telling you to do. So in other words, I'm telling you to stay away. You're not staying away. Listen to me. Stay away. Okay? American woman, get away from me. Okay, we've already kind of talked about that. American woman, mama, let me be. So we have let me be again. Okay, so we continue to the second verse. Don't come knocking round my door. Don't want to see your shadow no more. Okay, don't come knocking around my door. That's going to be the same thing as basically hanging around his door, except this time she's actually knocking on the door. Trying to get his attention, trying to get him to come out. Okay? So, knocking around my door. Probably should say don't come knocking on my door. It fits just as well. You have to have the right number of syllables in a line for it to sound right. Round and on are both one syllable. So I'm not sure why he said round my door. But whatever. That's what he put in there. It just means knocking on the door. So don't come knocking don't come knocking round my door, which is the same as don't come knocking on my door. Don't want to see your shadow no more. Okay, so this is kind of the same thing as don't want to see your face no more. Doesn't really mean I don't want to see your shadow. That doesn't really, that's, in fact, we don't even really say that. This is probably one of these lines where he was just trying to make it up as he went along. Don't want to see your face is something we do say. Don't want to see your shadow. We don't really say that, but it's the same meaning. So this really means the same thing as the first verse about coming around my door. I don't want to see you anymore. It's the same thing as that first verse. And now we get to the two lines which don't mean anything. He just made them up. Colored lights can hypnotize, sparkle someone else's eyes. Okay, I guess if you really wanted to try to think about it, you could try to relate it to this. Like colored lights can hypnotize. So maybe they met in a disco dance place, which was really popular at the time. And in those old days when people would go dancing, because of course we all had a lot more time on our hands back then. I say we, I wasn't born then. But I was born not too long after that, so I know people who would have done stuff like this. So we had a lot more time on our hands. We didn't have the internet. TV only had like 3 stations. So people went out and hung out together a lot more and did things. So they would go dancing a lot. And at those places where you dance, there's lots of colored lights and things like that. And so the colored lights can hypnotize. So maybe he kind of did like her briefly. And that's what it means by hypnotize. Hypnotize literally means like something like a special kind of doctor might try to do to you to try to get you to stop smoking or something like that. They use like hypnotism, which a lot of people say doesn't work, but some people try it. In this case, they're using that word more how we generally speak. In other words, it makes you think and feel differently than you normally would. So he normally would not like her. But in that situation, when they were at the disco dance place with all the lights, he kind of fell for her. And so he says, sparkle someone else's eyes. So he's asking for the lights to like sparkle in someone else's eyes because he doesn't want to be with her. So the lights can sparkle in your eyes. Now, honestly, I don't think that's what he was really meaning there, because even he says he just made that up. But if you wanted to try to relate that to the song, this could be what he's saying. That he, like for a brief moment, actually did like this woman. And so what he's saying here is he's explaining to her that not really. I was just hypnotized for the moment at the disco dance place. And let me say again for the 3rd time, that's not really what he means here, because it's just a random line that he made up. But again, if you wanted to try to make sense of it, you could maybe explain it that way. Okay, then we go back through the chorus, and he does change a couple of the words in there, but it's basically the same thing. It's the same chorus. So then we get to the 3rd verse. And again, it's going to be almost the same thing. Actually, it's the first 2 lines are the exact same as the first verse. Don't come hanging around my door. Don't want to see your face no more. And then the next 2 lines are again 2 lines where he just made up. So they don't necessarily have anything to do with the song. But they do have a couple of words that I will need to explain to you. So the next line is, I don't need your war machines. And the line after that is, I don't need your ghetto scenes. Okay, I don't need your war machines. Well, what does it mean by a war machine? Usually when we talk about a war machine in America, we don't actually mean like a real machine. Like a tank. Maybe you'd think that's a war machine, a tank. Or maybe an F-16 fighter jet. Might be a war machine. I think Thailand buys most of their military planes from America. They buy most of their military submarines from China, which is weird to buy stuff from both America and China. But I think that's what Thailand does. So Thailand probably has F-16s because they get them because they have American planes for their Air Force. That's not what we mean by a war machine. What they mean by the war machine is there are people and companies that make a lot of money off of war in America. And so they actually try to promote wars. That's terrible. People are getting killed. It's awful. It's horrible. These companies are evil. I've actually worked for one. I didn't work in that part of the company, thank God, but I did work for the company. It wasn't my choice. They bought the company I was working for at the time. So I've actually worked for one of these companies, and I've seen them do this type of thing, try to take advantage of a war. And they try to explain it like, oh, well, the war was going to happen anyway, so the government's going to need to buy these things, so we're just going to be here and make those things available. It's It's pretty sick the way they operate. That's what we mean by war machine. It's these terrible people and terrible companies that are profiting from war. And so they try to promote war. They encourage war. It's more money for them. That's the war machine. Which, again, that doesn't really have anything to do with the song, does it? No, it doesn't. And like I said, even the lead singer said that, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the song. He just made it up. And same thing with the next line. He just made it up. I don't need your ghetto scenes. So what does that mean, though? I don't need your ghetto scenes. Okay, so ghetto. This is a word that I think is almost uniquely American. I say almost. I do think they use it in Britain as well. And they have used it in the West to describe some German areas during World War II. Obviously, in Germany, they're going to speak German, so they probably don't have that word. So that's not what they called them in Germany. There was a word for that meant the same thing in German. But the way it was used in Germany in World War II is different than the way it's used now. It has a similar type of meaning, but it's a little different. So a ghetto is a really poor neighborhood. It's usually going to be bad places to live. There might be a lot of crime. Not necessarily, but a lot of times there's a lot of crime. It's usually dirty. It's mostly just poor. It's a bad area. It's poor. Even though I say it's mostly poor, it is usually a little worse than just poor. There can be poor neighborhoods that are actually, I shouldn't say nice, because being poor, it is hard to keep things up, so usually buildings are run down, stuff like that. But I have seen some almost nice neighborhoods that are poor in the southern part of America, because people still live in houses and things like that, not big apartment buildings that are really in bad shape. People still live in houses. They might just be small houses, but it's almost like a cute neighborhood, even though they're fairly poor. So being poor isn't the only thing that goes with a ghetto. It's also usually, like I said, usually, not always, but usually has crime, it's dirty, things like that. Now, the way they used that with Germany in World War II was the places where they would force Jewish people to go live. They'd call that the ghetto. And they were poor because they stole all of the things from the Jewish people, so they had nothing left. So they were poor, and they usually were dirty. But that is a little different, obviously, because that's people being forced there against their will, whereas a ghetto in, like, America, I mean, I suppose nobody wants to live there. I shouldn't make it sound like it's their choice. They sort of have no choice, but they haven't been physically forced to live there. They may have no choice because they're poor, but they haven't been forced to live there. So it's a little bit different. But it's a similar idea, though, that it's a poor place to live. So a ghetto scene, I'm not even really sure what he means by that. And again, maybe he didn't even know because, like I said, he just made it up. But he might mean, like, you know, the bad things that go along with being in a ghetto. Like I said, there was crime, it was dirty, so it's just bad. So when he says, I don't need your ghetto scenes, I don't need all the bad stuff that you bring with you. So you can kind of relate that to the song as well, because this is a bad woman, so he doesn't want all her bad stuff. But again, it's kind of made up, you know what I'm saying? So it may not really have any meaning there. Okay. And then he repeats the two lines from the second verse, which is colored lights can hypnotize, sparkle someone else's eyes. So it's kind of interesting. That third verse, they kind of combine the first and the second verse, and they add in the middle 2 additional lines. And then after that, we just get to the chorus. He does change it up a little bit, and he says bye-bye a bunch of times, things like that, but that's basically it. That's the end of the song, essentially, after we go through the chorus. And he does, like I said, he does bye-bye, bye-bye, things like that. And then the song just fades out. So that's it. Again, that's American Woman by the Guess Who. Now, As I said, the Guess Who, they don't have too many big hits. And while they were around a long time, they weren't around too long compared to a lot of the other bands we've done. So they didn't have time to have a lot of big hits. This song, American Woman, is certainly their number one hit, their top hit. But they do still have a few other reasonably big hits. No Sugar Tonight was very popular. That's another big hit of theirs. Share the Land, No Time, and These Eyes were also reasonably big hits. I personally am a fan of Share the Land. I think that's a good song. So there are other... we've had a couple of bands on here where they don't really have any other big songs, except the one we're doing. Mostly I try to pick bands that have a lot of other big songs. The Guess Who is kind of in between. They don't have really a lot of other huge hits. But again, some of these are quite popular. No Sugar Tonight was very popular. Share the Land, quite popular. No Time, These Eyes, those are also quite good. So I would still encourage you to go listen to a little bit more of their music. I personally am not that big of a fan of No Sugar Tonight, but it is very popular. A lot of people do like it, so you might like it. So go ahead and listen to that. And like I said, I personally am a big fan of Share the Land. So take a listen to that song as well. All right. Thank you for joining us for today's Musical Musings program. Please stay with us and make sure you tune back in next week for another great song. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Musical musings, musical musings, musings.